Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Even the least expensive seats behind, yes? I hope you all will display some patience with me and all the Norwegians here. There are some of us who have not slept last night because of those general elections that just took place. Pretty exciting times, and to see how democracy works really warms up our hearts. I take great pleasure in being with you here today, and honored by the presence of Angela Eichhorst of the European External Action Service and many others. There are many reasons for being delighted to be here. One is, of course, to acknowledge the fact that this magnificent building, which houses key institutions that that enable the good functioning of the EEA agreement, that it's actually working. You are a living proof of that. So congratulations. The other point is the fact that in spite of the hybrid format, and I'd like to wave my hand to all of those out there who are following us, we see through the attendance here in this room that we are working our way towards normalization after very trying times during the COVID. So I'd like to pay tribute to all of those who have been working extremely hard with dedication, passion, both on the EU side and on the EEA EFTA side, to basically compensate for the fact that we could not meet physically, but nevertheless have been working behind video screens and projecting innovation and dedication. So great to see so many of you here today. And the third thing is that I've been told that there are more than 300 people who are following this thing, which is superb. It basically is a proof of the importance of the EEA agreement. And I would like to say, all of you who are spending time today and giving priority to this, I think it will be well spent. I know it will be well spent. I think you made the right choice, because it's a success story with extremely interesting, sometimes a little intricate, but fundamentally very understandable mechanisms behind. So I will, on my side, try, as Ambassador of Norway, and as just mentioned, currently for this semester, chairing on the EEA EFTA side, I will, of course, my intention will be to start by telling you something about the Standing Committee. Let me be quite clear about that. I'm standing now, but the people in the Standing Committee are actually sitting. So no misunderstandings there. But I will tell you something about this EFTA Standing Committee, which is basically the key coordinating, organizing body to enable a common approach of Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway before one meets with the EU side, where the decisive decisions are taken. Decisive decisions, not very elegant, but you see what I mean. Basically leading to the EEA agreement having additions on a regular basis which have fundamental importance for the societies in which we live. And also promoting and contributing to the strength and the vibrant internal market that the EU-EEA common area, the internal market, represents. So we'll start by saying a few things about the EFTA Standing Committee, and I will thereafter highlight some of the priorities and challenges for this autumn. And in so doing, I will also touch upon the work of the EEA Joint Committee, where we actually meet the two sides, the EU side and the EEA EFTA side. And finally, I will share with you some reflections on Norway's more than 25-year-long membership in the EEA. What I will not do is to tell you the kind of government Norway will have, because that will take a little while, and there are soundings starting this afternoon, and there will be negotiations. But all of you that have been following this know that there will be a degree of continuity and consistency on key subjects which are close to our hearts. So the role of the Standing Committee. As already indicated, the role of the Standing Committee is to serve as a coordinating and organizing forum for the three states I mentioned, to discuss and agree on a common position before meeting with the EU side in the so-called EEA Joint Committee. The EEA Joint Committee, I think it's been mentioned 54 times already, but I think a good thing may be repeated often,
is where the three EEA EFTA states meet with the EU and formally decide on the updating of the EEA agreement with new legal acts that are relevant for our common internal market. In the Standing Committee, I meet with my excellent colleagues from Liechtenstein and Iceland. We do that about 8 times a year to prepare for joint committee meetings. And the joint committee meetings usually take place the day after the Standing Committee. So it's basically quite simple. If you do away with vacation time and summer recess and stuff like that, it's basically once a month. Standing Committee one day, joint committee next day. Any difficulties in understanding that basic framework? I think it's pretty crystal clear. What is happening there is exciting and hugely important. Through this system I referred to, the agreement is constantly being updated. For those of you who are very much into computer science, I'm really not. I'm more someone who fears it and has to use it. But if you think of constant upgrading of software to make things even better all the time, a huge part of the legislation that passes through those committees is dedicated to that. And today we have, with over 11,000 legal acts incorporated into the agreement. Please note that there's constant updating, so about 5,000 of those are no longer in force. So this is a very lively, I shouldn't say animal, but system. So when one says that this agreement has a broad scope and a dynamic nature, this is no exaggeration. Another key feature to really understand the mechanism of the EEA agreement is that it requires the three EEA EFTA states to speak with one voice. And we're pretty good at that. If you look around the world, I think you will see that there's usually national interests. There may be differences of views. And to reach common agreement is a goal. And we succeed pretty well. I think I stand to be corrected, but I think it's a huge success story. And that requires a lot of mutual confidence, openness, transparency, and sensitivity to all the relevant factors. But we're all united by the idea that the EEA agreement is fundamentally essential, and we have to make it work and contribute to that. Of course, it's very helpful that Liechtenstein, Iceland, and Norway basically share fundamental values and interests. So in most cases, it's not difficult at all to reach common positions in the Standing Committee. But acting together as one is, and speaking with one voice, is also a source of strength in dealing with the 27 EU member states. Sometimes it's very useful also if you see the way one provides for input through common EEA EFTA comments. When the three of us can project a common purpose, it has a particular, carries a particular interest and weight. So you could say, fundamentally, that we compensate for our lack of numbers, 193 members of the United Nations and 3 EEA EFTA states. We're not the dominant power together, but we make up for that and we compensate through excellent cohesion. Now, the Standing Committee and the Joint Committee are the most visible parts, maybe, of our EEA collaboration. Some would even say that, of course, when you have cases brought before various mechanisms such as the EFTA Court, it's very visible indeed. But it is important to bear in mind that the most intensive and time-consuming part of the work is done outside the meetings of the Standing Committee. So I'll get down, it boils down to you guys doing a fantastic job, because before stuff comes to the stage of being dealt with in the Standing Committee, let alone the Joint Committee, an enormous amount of work has been carried out. Right, Ben? Yeah. And we're extremely grateful for that, because it's a methodic, systematic approach to dealing with those issues based on an enormous amount of experience acquired. And I would like to salute the institutional memory that is being built up in those institutions. Without that, and also on the EU side, it would be very difficult indeed. So let me just say that few people know the numbers of experts and officials in our capitals and our missions and in our institutions, the EU institutions, who actually are working on at various stages on those issues. Hundreds of EU legal acts are examined and prepared for incorporation in the EEA agreement every year. Massive amount of work takes place within the 5 subcommittees and the 30 working groups reporting to the Standing Committee. So you may imagine an iceberg with the Standing Committee maybe on top or close to the top, and then an enormous substructure of various layers of hard-working people. In addition to preparing joint committees, committee meetings and discussing ongoing work in the subcommittees, we use the Standing Committee to exchange views on the broader relations with the EU at political level. I should like to add that a feature which is probably under-communicated, not very well known in our societies, is also the work dedicated to decision shaping at the early stages, where the Commission takes initiatives and where the EEA EFTA states are invited on a par with the stakeholders of EU member states to contribute to understanding of issues that may have a bearing on future regulations. So take on board a huge amount of work which is not necessarily visible in day-to-day life, but which has a huge impact on the end result. I would be amiss if I didn't mention the central role of the EEA Council. That is our basic top-level political body, where ministers of foreign affairs from the EEA EFTA states meet twice a year, this is every semester, with a council presidency on the EU side, the European External Action Service, the European Commission, in order to review the functioning of the EEA agreement and to provide political direction. And this is an important arena for our ministers to discuss practical political issues relating to the implementation of the agreement. So I know all of you are well aware of the importance of not only reading through the conclusions and final documents stemming from the EEA Council meetings, but I'm pretty sure you bring it like I do in your inner pocket every day, and you put it under your pillow when you sleep, because lots of fundamental agreed language there provides direction and a clear idea about what the main challenges and purposes are ahead of us. Now, as you may imagine, the machinery is well oiled in the sense that the Standing Committee, Joint Committee and the EEA Council are quite formal bodies, and one should never miss, and during COVID times it's more obvious than ever, that one cherishes also the informal contacts between delegations, between people working in institutions like you are, EFTA Secretariat, capitals, people, colleagues there, our counterparts in the EAS, in Commission, Presidencies, Council. This informal network, this epistemic community, so to speak, is essential to grasp fundamentals. And I think it's exceedingly important to understand why the EEA agreement is working well. There is a human aspect to it, and there is interconnectivity which goes beyond what the Standing Committee and Joint Committee actually project. There's lots behind the scenes. Briefly now on the key priorities of the Norwegian chair of the Standing Committee for the remaining half of this year. The overall aim, fundamental one, is to continue good efforts to ensuring the excellent functioning of the EEA agreement, safeguard homogeneity, legal homogeneity, and the level playing field in the internal market. First priority in ensuring this will be to focus on the core task of the EFTA Standing Committee, which is the timely incorporation of EEA relevant EU acts into the EEA agreement. This is closely and intimately related to maintaining the level playing field across the EEA, which is essential to individuals, citizens, businesses, research institutions, etc., etc. So we are working to reduce the backlog of legal acts awaiting incorporation, and we will give special attention to critical files long outstanding in fields such as financial services and transport. So thank you to all of you who are working on those dossiers,
Highly appreciated, very important. Second priority will be to maintain close cooperation with the EU on all COVID-19 related measures, quite a few, and we're pursuing a common approach. And in that context, extremely important to preserve the integrity of the EEA internal market in those trying times where the pandemic sometimes may constitute a challenge to the normal day-to-day running of the internal market. But it's been working quite well, I must say, thanks to all the systems I mentioned. Swift incorporation of urgent COVID-19 files is key, obviously. One such recent example is, of course, the EU digital COVID certificate, which has had an immense impact since it entered into force simultaneously in our systems. Here we have worked exceedingly well together, and I think this has allowed many people to travel safely across borders within the EEA this summer. I've already referred to that, but I would be totally remiss if I didn't again thank the EES and you, Angelina, for the excellent cooperation we have with the EU side concerning the COVID certificate, but also all the other files on the pandemic. Some of those have been dealt with on fast-track basis, irrespective of time of the day or during weekends, etc., etc. So I should also be amiss if I didn't thank all those who have been working in the EFTA Surveillance Authority, ESA, and the European Commission, who have been working extremely hard to align on state aid measures during the last year and a half due to the enormous input that has been provided to make businesses get over this particularly difficult and trying time, while respecting basic principles of the internal market. At the same time, I refer to the decision shaping. This means, and it's basically a challenge, an opportunity, a possibility, a tool that should be used in my view, used even more in the three EEA EFTA states at all levels, to look carefully into new EU policy initiatives, legal acts at an early stage, and where appropriate to produce common EEA EFTA comments or other input which might be useful, might provide important input to the processes that are being engaged on the EU side. Currently, we are fascinatingly and closely following the initiatives presented on the European Green Deal, including the Fit for 55 package, which has enormous consequences and possibilities. And in addition to that, of course, EU's Digital Decade, European Health Union are just catchwords for extremely important features. We usually speak of the four freedoms, pretty much acquainted with that. I would like to add the fifth one, which is ideas, creativity, innovation, and relating to that, the programs, and the fact that the EEA agreement basically predetermines the modalities for participation in EU programs for the three EEA EFTA states is enormously important. And priority this autumn concerns also participation of EEA EFTA states in new programming period for all those extremely important programs for the period 2021 to 2027. Many of those are essential and aim at accelerating the green and digital transitions, and they offer a variety of opportunities to stakeholders. And just mention Horizon Europe for Erasmus Plus, and the list is much lengthier than that. So our priority during this chair is to make sure that program regulations are incorporated into the EEA agreement as soon as possible, and that stakeholders in the EEA EFTA states fully enjoy the rights to participation. So to do that, one needs also to do some outreach. Because all I've been saying is familiar to you, but not necessarily to every passerby in the street. So we have, during our chair, also we're putting some emphasis on outreach to strengthen knowledge of the EEA. So this seminar is an important contribution in this respect, and I hope all those who are following this seminar, also from afar on your screens, that you both express your gratitude to the EFTA Secretariat for organizing this, but also that you take the messages and the possibilities that you identify during this day with you and spread the word to others.
So this autumn we plan to organize events targeting EU institutions in a nice way. We will also explore new opportunities that this magnificent functional building be fully utilized as soon as conditions so allow, COVID-wise, etc., for profiling and raising awareness of the EEA agreement. I will now end and spoken too lengthy, but there's a lot of enthusiasm behind those words, so I beg for your patience. A brief word now on the EEA financial mechanisms, which you will hear more of about later today. I think it's on the program. The implementation of programs in the current period, the program period of 2014 to 2021, is in full swing in 14 beneficiary states. They make a difference. As the current program period is coming to an end, the EEA EFTA States and the EU have recently reviewed the need to address social and economic disparities in the EEA, and in joint conclusions we have ascertained that there is a need, continued needs. So on that basis, negotiations for a new period of financial mechanisms will soon start. I will not go into depth into all the Norwegian perspectives on EEA cooperation, but just those of you who have been following the campaigning in Norway will notice that the references to the EEA agreement have been quite frequent. Very often they've been accurate, sometimes not exactly. So there's a huge potential for basically continuing to explain and not least understand the potential and the possibilities that lie in this agreement. We define that as the cornerstone of relations between Norway and the European Union. It ensures in a very unruly world, so to speak, or unpredictable world, a stable long-term framework for a huge number of areas of cooperation stemming from, of course, the legal and economic aspects to close political cooperation. And I should say it's unique to other international agreements regulating trade and cooperation because it's so much more, and also based on fundamental values that we fully share. And I would like to salute those institutions, including ESA, who have been also engaging in issues which have to do with the rule of law as a linchpin for the internal market, and the trust one needs in mutual recognition of a system being based on impartial and good, well-working courts, etc. So the agreement impacts everyday lives of citizens. List I have of examples is so long that I won't bore you with it. But it touches upon basically every segment of society. And therefore it's with a certain degree of excitement that we look back at the 25 years that have contributed to securing welfare, job opportunities, ideas, innovation, and cross-border contacts, which are pretty essential in our world today. And we look forward to the continuation in the future, which is bright. And please take on board the fact that a number of stakeholders in Norway do access important research, infrastructure, technology, which would be difficult for them to develop on their own. And they are so busy doing those things that are not always in the media. So there is a huge potential for highlighting even more what is being done. However, the well-functioning of the agreement, which is the key success factor, depends on you, on our ability to administer it, to manage it with care and effectiveness combined. So I think that's the key role of today, and I will now leave the floor and the screen to Angelina, and basically thank you all for your attention, and we may respond to questions afterwards. Thank you.